Tucker Carlson is generally not too fond of the Jews, but whenever it's the type of Jew that hates other Jews also, that is the one that he will invite on his show. Of course, we're talking about Ben Cohen, the co-founder of Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream, who has been invited on Tucker Carlson's show. This is one of the topics that we'll be discussing today. They didn't talk about Israel as much, so that's why I didn't want to make it the full topic. There might be a whole another show. We might make it because they talked about Ukraine for much more. So there might be a separate show on that. But they had a few comments on Israel and Iran, which I think will be good to cover on today's show. Then we'll have the Palestinian Authority is urging UN intervention in Gaza. So we'll talk a little bit about that, since I think there are a few good observations to go. And a new, sorry, not UN, a new survey done by Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research has been done in Gaza, has just been released, I think, a few days ago, I think on May 6th. And a few interesting things were there. Among them, half of Palestinians want to leave Gaza. Will that be facilitated? Will the world give this type of self-determination to Palestinians, ability to leave? Well, I guess we'll have to see. But first, let's go into the main topic, Ben Cohen on Tucker Carlson. Welcome to the reality show. Joining me today are Marco, Richard, and Anders. I'm wondering if should we just go into the video itself, since unless you guys wanna comment on, no, let's watch the video. It's not a long clip. So yeah, this is the first one.
Where do you think we're going on Iran?
It sounds like we're kind of headed toward war.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there seems to be some kind of strange relationship between Israel and the U.S., where, I don't know, Israel now has the U.S. supplying weapons for its genocide, and what I'm told is that Israel wants some concept of greater Israel. I mean, I don't really know much about that.
Yeah, he doesn't know much, but he's definitely going to comment on the strange relationship that Israel has with the US. The whole way he was talking, I think he just wanted to say Jews are controlling America, but he thought, okay, that's going a bit too far. I shouldn't probably say that. So, it's a strange relationship. They're supplying the genocide. They'll go into Iran a bit more, which we'll comment on later. But yeah, Marco, I know you guys are big fans of Ben and Jerry's. You have it framed behind you. What do you make of Ben Cohen's comments?
Well, I mean, poor guy. He's a socialist. I mean, some of the comments he makes says later on about the wealth in America and how we should give money to the world to cure things and stuff like that. He's the typical socialist who wants everybody else to pay for what he wants, but he's quite happy to keep the millions he's got. He doesn't want his millions touched, and this. I mean, how pathetic. This weapons for the genocide. It's like, come on, man. I mean, this guy has got the means, should know better, but still he relies on what he's told by some disembodied voice that tells him that Israel is busy committing genocide. And of course, he quite plainly admits he doesn't know what's happening. But as you said, he's quite happy to throw this kind of tribe accusation against Israel, for free. What the hell?
Yeah, you can almost see the cogs turning in his head, can't you? And sort of locking in place as he tries to reject half of what he wants to say, but knows that's too much. but is desperate to read out his own mental placard that Israel is causing genocide, which is obviously flagrantly untrue. And of course, the way he's doing it is just as a blanket assertion that is an attempt at virtue signaling from his point of view, and of course it is shallow and hollow for that. But I mean that's partly how he's rolled, isn't it, for so long, isn't it? That's been partly the his claim to fame is as much about the bandwagon shouting, the pontificating on leftist issues, as much as it is about, back in the day creating ice cream flavors.
Yeah, and to go to you, Anders, he talked about the sort of what was it? Yeah, strange relationship. There's nothing strange about it. Israel is one of the closest allies to America. They have the same enemies, and they have similar ideals, right? It's not about the relationship America has to Israel is not the same relationship America has to Saudi Arabia, despite the fact they have the same enemies technically, but they do not share the same values, right? Israel is a modern country. Israel is a civilized nation. Israel is a nation that has a respect for individual rights and has similar values than America. Trying to put that as you know I think he very much wanted to go into some anti-Semitic spiel. I think he decided not to. But yeah, Anders, what do you make of his comments?
Well, first I want to make it clear that I've been boycotting Ben and Jerry's ice cream since the mid 90s for environmental reasons, and over the last few years, as icing on the cake, they of course to add their anti-Semitic views as well. So even more reason to boycott them. But back to your question. When it comes to the US support of Israel, yes, of course, Israel is an outpost of Western civilization in a barbaric part of the world. Now, there is much to criticize about Israel. It's a welfare state, and yes, they do respect individual rights more than any other nation in the area. There is a lot that can be improved upon in Israel, and Israel is in many ways its own worst enemy. When it comes to dependency on the United States, I think we should, and I actually read an article recently that arguing that Israel should, and this was by an Israeli, rid itself of the support from the US. I mean, the US should be a trading partner. Israel should buy weapons from the US as needed, but don't rely on handouts. And the handouts have been going down. If you look historically, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was a fairly large percent of the defense budget and of the GDP. And that has consistently gone down to the point that I think the US, were supporting them with $4 billion a year or something like that. And if that is just defense material or if that is overall, I'm not sure. But that is a relatively small portion nowadays of the Israeli defense budget. And this article argued that Israel should just try to get out of that completely and establish a full trading relationship with the US, which I think would be helping Israel in making independent decisions better. So yes, Israel is an outpost of Western civilization. We should support them. We know that Iran and the other nations, they want to rid the area of Jews. And we also know that if they would be successful in that effort, well, the US is next on their list. So there's no doubt there. And Ben Cohen, he's old. He's tired. You can't expect him to change his views. They've been the same since the 60s, the 1960s, basically. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think sort of the interesting part is that someone like Tucker Carlson would invite him. He also described him super weirdly. He describes Ben Cohen as a liberal, which I think any sort of socialist would like run away from the description of liberal because they are not. They are against America. They are against liberal democracies. They are against any sort of Western values. And he described his company as like the most liberal company, which
And
is
yeah, just it's actually not surprising that Tucker Carlson invites Ben Cohen, because he is scanning the globe for anybody who is against American involvement anywhere in the world. So Tucker, in that sense, as despicable as it is, he's consistent in this way.
yeah. And we have one more clip where they talk a little bit more about Iran. So let's watch that one.
Do you think the U.S. faces a threat from Iran?
No, I don't. No, I think that's absurd. I think that, Iran has a Pentagon budget. Well, not a Pentagon. Their military budget is like $7 billion. Our Pentagon budget is darn close to $1 trillion. So I don't think that. What is Iran gonna invade the U.S.? I don't think so.
Yeah, again, this lack of any sort of thought, like, oh, Iran has only a sort of like a low spending, so they are not a threat. Oh, you mean how they support a proxy armies like the Houthis, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, who kill Americans? Iran itself came into being by taking American hostages. The Americans were taken on October 7 with the support of Iran. Americans, not to mention Israel, is or sort of like I think Israeli are one of the biggest sort of like dual citizenship when it comes to American Israelis are one of the sort of like biggest sort of dual citizenship groups. So we have a lot of Americans. I remember, now I have a lot of stories from Israel. I remember going through the border security, and I'm nosy, so I look at what passports people have. Most of them were Americans. It is mostly Americans that are visiting Israel, and yeah, they cannot be a threat. Houthis attacking international shipping, including American ships or sort of ships owned by American companies. And you could go on and on. No, not a threat to America. Not to mention, once they develop nuclear weapons, what threat that could be. There, even like now, then depends if you believe that. I'm wondering if he even believes that Russia or China are American enemies. But Iran helping Russia, helping who again, Russia is threatening Americans, is threatening Europe definitely. China is threatening America. You could go on and on about how Iran is an enemy of America, even if you believe that that America shouldn't go to war with Iran, which I think is a misguided belief. The idea that Iran is not a threat to America, is not an American enemy, is not coming from ignorance. I think he is, in his wise age, and should definitely go better. It's coming from anti-American. It's coming from they only hate us because we invaded them, or they only committed 9/11 because we did something in the Middle East. Is a completely dishonest view of history and reality itself. Marco, what do you make of his comments on Iran?
Well, it's not only misguided, it's plain idiotic. I mean, first of all, how does he know that Iran spends 7 billions in defense? That's the defense budget for Iran. Is he such a close friend of the Ayatollah who's allowed to audit the books? I mean,
yeah, and even then, it's like not true. The numbers we have are more like 20 or upwards of the 20 billion. But yeah.
Yeah, but to be honest, I mean, Iran can wage war against America in the same way it's waging war against Britain, for example, by paying, funding cells. Recently, a group of people were arrested here in Britain with a plan to attack the Israeli embassy in London. You don't need an army, you don't need tanks in order to wage war. I mean, how expensive is it to fund a couple of jihadis to blow themselves left, right, and center? They've been doing it all over the West, and we still pretend that war is only waged with tanks and heavy missiles. I mean, this whole attitude is just idiotic. This guy is effectively saying, "Oh, Iran are just a bunch of pussycats. They're lovely people. Why are we so threatened by them?" Well, Mr. Cohen, it's because they're a bunch of Islamic monsters and terrorists, really. It's because they are among the enemies of civilization who've been quite explicit from the very first beginning in 1979, 78, 79, to express their hate for America and the West, to call America the great Satan, to call the West the enemy of Islam and whatever kind of crazy stuff they believe in. So, if you don't believe your own enemies, well, you'll be lost.
And despite what hardcore socialists like Ben Cohen say, and they always pretend it's the capitalists that are obsessed with money, it's actually those hardcore socialists that are obsessed with money and see everything with a dollar sign against it. And the higher the dollar figure, the lower value in merit or virtue a country has, and the lower the figure, the more oppressed and small fry they are. And therefore, he's on the side of essentially of Iran in comparison with America. He treats America as being a bad country because it's a wealthy country. And Iran, therefore, having his sympathy, at least by default. And that, of course, is utter nonsense. And of course, in the course of it, he's not mentioning any of the aggressive activities that Iran engages in, that whether it's the threats or the actual nature of their violence, whether it's the tons of missiles they threw at Israel in 2024, whether it's they work through the proxies of the Houthis or Hezbollah, and of course the fact that Iran is at the moment on the back foot in terms of having to withdraw from Syria and its support of Hezbollah having been significantly set back. I want to say crushed, but I'm reluctant to go that far. Significantly set back by Israel. That just makes them even more oppressed and even more a victim in this comparison of a David and a Goliath, where he's choosing to make America the Goliath, and in this case, Iran the David, ironically.
Yeah, and as some people are saying in the chat, also is the disinformation or the social media campaign Iran, or more specifically Russia, can handle. Not to mention, Iran has one of the biggest sort of cyber offensive capabilities when it comes to our enemies. They have potentially the ability to shut down parts of American industry, parts of American military capabilities. Again, trying to act as this country small and not much money, so we don't have to again. How much did 9/11 cost the terrorists to perform? Right? It's are you going to act as it was just a few people, so it's not a big problem. That's ridiculous way of looking at sort of the lives of your citizens, or the property of your citizens. Anders, any comments on his comments on Iran?
Well, yeah, he mentioned also something about Greater Israel, that he wasn't really sure what that was, but I would hope that he's right, that there is ambitions for Greater Israel, because I've long advocated for Israel to occupy outright Gaza, the West Bank, southern Lebanon, and the Golan Heights, southern Syria, perhaps, and rule that with an iron fist and implement property rights, and then slowly but surely over the next few decades, as the population is turning their focus to a civilian life of amassing and living the good life, human flourishing, prosperity, and then obviously you expand the rights of that population little by little. But I'm not sure that is what Ben Cohen is thinking about when he's thinking about the Greater Israel.
And of course, just to add, sorry, I just wanted to add to the comments on Iran. He's not talking about any of the internal oppression that occurs in Iran, and all of the things that should engender the support of those sympathetic towards oppressed minorities, such as women in Iran, for example, and those trying to rise up against the system that's oppressing them and forcing them into how they dress, how they behave, and tells them essentially what they can't do the whole time.
Somebody in the chat asked, Israel wants to annex Tehran and question marks. I don't think this was what he was referring to as Greater Israel, that it's just going to be, one state across all of Middle East. And I mean, specifically Ben Cohen, when
Yeah, no,
talking.
in American terms, I think Greater Israel is to expand from being the size of Connecticut or something to Connecticut and Rhode Island. So, we're not talking about a vast territory here.
Yeah, unless when I was in Jerusalem, I went to the Gush Katif Museum, which is about the settlers, the Israeli settlers in Gaza, and how they were forced out. And they had a nice map there, including Sinai. So maybe that's one of the Greater Israel. Maybe we can do both, right? We can keep Palestinians in Israel, just move them to Sinai, then Sinai becomes part of Israel, and we can do sort of have both of those things. But yeah, we'll go to the second topic unless you guys have anything to add on Ben Cohen. And with that,
just for our British listeners, I just looked up the size of Israel, and it's almost exactly the size of Wales. So there is perhaps a comparison that makes more sense than Connecticut and Rhode Island.
Yeah, and not.
Sorry, and considerably more successful was what I was going to add. But
Whoa, the Welsh are catching strays here. Not to mention, even when it comes to Israel, I'm not sure if most of it is desert, but giant parts, especially of the south, are just a desert that are barely anybody lives there. So when you think about the actual size where people live, Israel is a tiny country. I was traveling around Israel with like no problems, and like from one place to from one corner of the country to the other within a few hours. Like, it's a small country. You can see if you like go to like a bit of a higher position, you can like see most of Israel. So it's a really tiny country, and it managed to do incredible things with that. Yeah, let's go to the second topic. So we have the Palestinian Authority leader Mohammed Mustafa urging UN intervention, is accusing Israel of blocking aid and causing famine in Gaza amid continued fighting and stalled ceasefire talks, which I found funny. And sort of going back to what Anders said about the Greater Israel, is when I read this, I was like, well, I sure hope so. I sure hope Israel is blocking aid to its enemies. I sure hope Israel is trying to finish this war as soon as possible. And if that involves famine, if that involves the enemies, even the civilians who are refusing to do anything about Hamas, who are refusing to do anything when it comes to ending the war, yeah, you do whatever is necessary to finish it as soon as possible. He also said that Israel is bearing the direct responsibility for the deliberate humanitarian disaster. He also called Israel the occupying power, which again is completely inversion of any idea of reality, really. The fact that Hamas is not responsible for the humanitarian disaster, who actually started the war. Was there a humanitarian crisis before October 7, or was it after October 7? And the question is, what happened on October 7? And it wasn't caused by Israeli response to October 7. It was caused by Hamas starting a war against Israel and suffering the consequences of it. That's what happens in war. That's why you don't start a war. That's why it's really bad to do that. It's really not productive, to say the least, to start the war and then losing the war. Marco?
Yeah, the only humanitarian disaster in Gaza, which there is one, is actually the Palestinians themselves. They were given control over the Gaza Strip, and what did they do? They chose to elect Hamas as their form of government. This was 20 years ago, so it's not like it's an accident, or it's you voted wrong once and you regret it now. They still quite love their government. So if they are suffering at all now, if there's anyone who's feeling uncomfortable in Gaza, well, it's thanks to their own choices and actions, thanks to their own government, which decided to effectively attack and kill over 1,000 people in Israel and take the hostages. Some of the hostages are still actually in Gaza now. So, if they really were suffering so badly, they would surrender. And the fact that the Palestinian Authority member, Mustafa, is asking the UN to intervene, well, it's because they're looking around, trying who's left standing, who can help the enemies of civilization. Oh, I know, the UN. The UN is stuffed to the heaves with dictatorships and all sorts of bad actors. So they're gonna find favor and a friendly ear to try and stop Israel from doing what it's doing. And by the way, Israel is not starving the Palestinians, mainly because the Palestinians don't starving in the first place, but also because, even according to the latest plan, they will move the population, and once they're vetted, they will distribute humanitarian aid. So it's hardly a starvation plan, is it? It's just, but again, it's the headline grabbing attention that they're looking for, just to trying to boast a bit of propaganda, really.
Yeah, sorry to jump in quickly. A new pope has been elected about 15 minutes ago. White smoke went up. Robert Francis. Yeah, it's what happens. Robert Francis Prevost, a native of Chicago, American pope. So that's interesting to see. His name is gonna be Leo 14th. Unless you guys want to comment on this, we can probably move on. But I just figured
prefer Trump.
Yeah.
I think I just lost money in the sweepstakes.
So not Trump.
Well, I despite what people were saying, I don't think he can be. Like, I think you have to be practicing Catholic. No, that's what I don't mean. Like, no, because actually, any practicing Catholic can, like, I technically could become a pope. If they all voted for me, I could have become the pope. You don't have to be cardinal. Basically, any practicing Catholic can become a pope. So
no, and unlike the United States, you don't have to be born in the Vatican.
yeah. Which nobody is, so that will make it a pretty hard. All right, completely side topic. Going back to you, Richard. What do you make of the demands?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're led to believe, aren't we, by 1001 Western moronic commentators that the Palestinian Authority is the moderate organization, the one that should take over the running of Gaza after the war is over. And of course, what is he spouting other than the same line that Hamas is essentially spouting? And where within what he's saying is the announcement that Hamas should release the hostages, which really ought to be not even necessary to say. That ought to be your main policy in terms of ending the war swiftly. And of course, when we get on to our third topic, we'll cover why some of the reasons are perhaps that the Palestinians are unwilling to release the hostages. But that's to come. This is essentially the same words we've heard once again. This is one of the other levers of the big propaganda effort that occurs all over the place and that tries to bring in the respectable face of the same mess that we're hearing in the campuses, or whether it's on the streets in London or New York, or of course whether it's in Gaza itself. But of course, this is no different, and it's the same bunch of lies and misrepresentations and distortions of fact, which fact is not present when it comes to analysing any of this. Clearly, none of it is true. So there's no starvation going on, as we've covered before, and the extent to which there is any lack of food for Gazans, it's because of their own activities, and it's because of Hamas, stealing it when it comes in from the aid organizations all across the world. So it's on their own shoulders ultimately.
Anders?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Mark and Richard said. I think it's worthwhile pointing out here that the fact that this just continues and continues. I mean, it's not surprising that a leader of the Palestinian Authority is coming out and appealing to the UN or the world or whatever. But this is just another instance of where Israel is its own worst enemy, and because of internal factions. And forgive me for saying it, but this fanatic focus on bringing home the hostages instead of ending it once and for all, and then you secure yourself from having future hostages taken. But this could have been over a year ago with decisive action, and the world would have moved on. A lot of the voices, I'm pretty sure, would have been silenced or quieted. But we are where we are, and hopefully Israel can get its act together, and hopefully they will not pay attention to these appeals to the UN and just go about their business and do what it takes to establish peace in the region.
Somebody earlier in the chat said, I think Smotrich did say that everything to Damascus rightfully belongs to Israel, which did scare a lot of people. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, most of the Middle East is terra nullius, not really part of any organized civilized government, right? Most of the, or pretty much all besides Israel, countries in the Middle East do not have any legitimacy as far as I'm concerned. They do not protect individual rights. They do not have any basis for being an actual like a proper country. So as far as I'm concerned, any free nation has every right, or sort of has every ability to do whatever they want, but it should always be sort of in the goal of pursuing individual rights to protect the individual rights of the people in those countries. So if Israel wants to take over parts of the southern Syria to protect, for example, the Druze population or any population for that matter, it absolutely can do so, but not because of some like divine right from thousands of years ago or anything in those regards, simply to protect people, to protect people's rights. So yeah, let's go. Well, one more thing that he said is that he called for the UN and specifically the Secretary General to intervene immediately, invoke the Article 99, Chapter 15 of the UN Charter, which calls the UN Security Council to do something. Which again, good luck. America is never gonna vote with anything, so wouldn't matter. UK is always gonna abstain, whatever matters, so that also doesn't matter. And yeah, like I love this. I love them calling for the UN to do something because this shows how much of a useless organization it is when it comes to doing something material, but also really bad organization or sort of real evil organization when it comes to do anything morally. The fact that UN Security Council would be called not because of October 7th, not because of everything Hamas and Palestinians have done against Israelis, but because Israel is defending itself, but because Israel is acting in what needs to actually happen when it comes to sort of proper conduct to war. And when I say proper conduct to war, means win as soon as possible with minimal casualties on your side and whatever is necessary to do on the other side. We have a super chat from Roland. Thank you so much. He says, make the Vatican great again. No more immigrant popes. I'm sure. I mean, there were a lot of like bets I've seen, like, oh, is the next pope gonna be black? Is the next pope gonna be Asian? All of those. And yeah, at the end of the day, you get American, which is surprising. I don't think anybody was sort of thinking that America. I don't know what were the bets on. Wasn't really following it that closely. Didn't really care much. But yeah,
But they're getting a Chicago Pope, so Chicago politics and Vatican politics are pretty similar, I think. So it'll probably work out.
yeah, I don't think this guy will call for eradication of the Palestinian ideas when it comes to destroying Israel. It will probably more of the same. But who knows? You know, Pope Francis, he was like, that was the Pope, right? That was the guy who's gonna bring the new age to Catholic Church. Maybe we should do a whole topic on the Pope.
Quite honestly, I'm
Yeah.
glad that takes it out of the news. because I think it's dominated too much of the coverage of what's been going on lately across mainstream media, and quite honestly, it's a clown show.
Marco, any comments on sort of the UN, how how general the Palestinians have been trying to use it, and hopefully will this bring, because I've noticed in the last few maybe weeks, maybe even months, that Israel is seemingly caring less about what other people say, which is great to see, especially when it comes to their plan for Gaza is still sort of staying. Hamas has rejected to take any sort of deal. So if they'll keep that, we will have occupation in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, what's quite noticeable here is how the appeal to the UN is not a desperate appeal from a guy who doesn't know who to turn to, but it's somebody who's goes to the UN because until now they've been actively supported by the UN. The UN provides logistical help through schools and stuff where the Hamas people have been hiding and storing their weapons. The UN provides indoctrination for the children of the Palestinians in order to hate the Jews. The UN provides food and weapons and all sorts of stuff to certainly money to Hamas and every single jihadi Palestinian that want to kill a few Jews. And the UN provides all those institutions that collect billions and billions every year in disguised as charity and support for the poor Palestinians, and then funnels it into the tunnels of death in Gaza. So what a surprise! And if you really wanted to find out who the Palestinians and this kind of uncivilized monsters look up to, well, that's the UN.
Richard?
Yeah, I don't know what to add to that, to be honest. Apart from the fact that I agree with it. I mean, maybe when we get to the third story, we can cover the reasons why all the same language and the same attitudes are taken across the board, regardless of whether people are uneducated on the streets or supposedly hold a multiple set of degrees and have seats at the UN, because there's a lot of uniformity in outlook. And of course, it's all based on the same misplaced ideology and the same misplaced conclusions that derive from it.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Anyway, I'll introduce the next topic, then I'll go to you, Anders. So as I mentioned, a new survey was done by Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, which was great to see because the last one was like in September, and I'm refreshing them every day just to see if they release the next one. Yeah, one of the things it revealed is that 50% of Palestinians do want to leave Gaza, or would sort of leave Gaza if it was facilitated, which Israel has committed to some time ago, that they would help Palestinians leave who want to and relocate them somewhere, wherever, whichever country accepts them. So we have Palestinians wanting to leave, Israel wanting some Palestinians to leave, and sort of bearing or setting up an organization or setting up processes for it to happen. We'll have to see if we have countries willing to take Palestinians. Anders, do you think this seems like a win-win-win scenario? What do you think will happen? What do you think will be the attitude of both international organizations, of the UN, of the so-called pro-Palestinian activists when it comes to the self-determination of Palestinians?
Well, I'm for the free movement of people. So in theory, they should be able to go wherever they want to go. But I think you touched on it. The biggest hurdle in this, I don't think anybody wants them. I know that people who have visas, who have foreign passports, have already left. Don't know how many of those are still in Gaza. But But as for the rest of them, sure, if they want to leave, let them leave. I don't think when push comes to shove that a lot of people will, quote unquote, get out, even if they were offered the opportunity. So I maintain my position that Israeli occupation is the only viable solution going forward, as little taste for that Israel may have, and just to over a couple of generations condition the Palestinian people to become more pro-life, pro-human flourishing, and learn to live a civilized life.
We have a super chat from Gingasaurus who says, "Who would accept them?" I mean, that is sort of a question, but it has been answered in the past. It has been answered in the neighboring country. Millions of Syrians were forced to leave Syria, and countries accepted it. Europe accepted, I think, maybe a couple millions. Turkey itself absorbed millions of Syrians, as well as the surrounding countries. If you really care for sort of the lives, if you really care for the humanitarian situation, you should want them to live. You should want them to sort of have access to a better life. Now, the question is if this is sort of the best thing, I think, is for Gaza. But when it comes to sort of, if you consider yourself pro-Palestinian, if you really care about Palestinian lives, if your idea of Palestinian lives is to let them suffer in Gaza forever because you have some vision of a Palestinian state, so you need politically for these people to suffer and to stay there, I mean, be my guest. But yeah, it really does seem like I think there would be countries that would accept them if really the goal is to sort of relieve some. If you, I mean, we've been hearing the reports, right? These people are starving. These people, there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. These people are dying, and they don't want them to get out of that situation. Marco.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really like the name Gingasaurus. It's like a Howard Rourke from a Triassic, isn't it? But yeah, I think the headline should be 50% of Hamas wants out. 50% of the terrorists want to leave the place where they are about to be, getting their comeuppance and go away in order to regroup and regather their strength to go back and try again. So, I mean, this survey is just incredibly pathetic, if anything else, because it shows how radicalized these people are, how seriously evil and vicious they are. And the main reason is that if you look at the result for the support for keeping hostages, the support for Hamas, the support for the worst element in the Palestinian Authority, in the name of Djibouti, what's his name?
Barghouti.
Barghouti, sorry. Barghouti, who was the hero of the Second Intifada. It goes to show that despite having seen what's happened during the war and following the attack on October the 7th, and seeing how Hamas itself has been parading and treating the hostages during the clownish events that we've seen during the releases, still is not enough to show the people of Gaza how bad, how evil, how vicious the government is. And clearly, even the so-called suffering of the Gazans is not, again, nearly enough to make them change their murderous ways. So this survey is being carried out by a Palestinian organization. So there's no way to spin it like, oh, Israel is behind it, this kind of stuff. So it's just sad to see that these people, as Anders was suggesting, need pure, hardcore de-radicalization, need pure and unadulterated occupation in order to be taught how to be civilized human beings.
I think when we've covered this survey in the past, I've made this comment, but I'll just get my caveat out of the way. I'm wary of surveys at the best of times, and this particular survey is it's as far as I can see, it's the best attempt you can get at trying to ascertain the views of those in Gaza and the West Bank, given who you're asking and the way in which you're asking. So it comes with all those caveats. And I think they had asked about 1,200 people, and I think it was basically around 2/3 were in the West Bank and a third in the Gaza Strip. As a proportional split, but in terms of what they found, most of it is largely unchanged from previous surveys, despite seven months more of war. And certainly, none of it requires a change in your outlook, your attitude. You still, as Marcus said, you want to hang on to the hostages because you want to retain that human currency that you can use as a negotiating ploy. That's what these Palestinians want to do, judging by the survey results. That hasn't changed. And of course, when it comes to whether they want to leave or not, none of that comes with the, do you accept you were defeated? Do you accept you give up on the ideology that led to the war in the first place? Do you recognize that Hamas was at fault? No, that they would simply want to move to somewhere at Israel's expense with all of the benefits of being given somewhere to live, somewhere and the money to go with it, but without any of the acknowledgement of what took them to that point. And of course, they would then continue to spout, no doubt, the anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish propaganda from there on out and claim a right to return to Gaza afterwards. So what exactly does the survey prove? The survey proves that if you offer somebody a chance to get out for now with some bells and whistles attached to it, that they're going to go for it. But then they're going to try and come back again, and they're going to try and retain all the advantages they got through the deception along the way. So I don't think there's any big surprise in the course of that, and it's the fact that they don't recognise any of this really being the fault of Hamas. And when we get to coverage of the protests within the Gaza Strip and the comments on those kind of protests that the survey brought out, we'll pull that out more.
Yeah. So and I think, Daniel, to your comment earlier, I think there's a difference between the Palestinians and other refugee movements, if you like, in the Middle East. You brought up the Syrians as an example. I think, and this goes to what Marco and Richard just said, I think the Palestinians are considered toxic for those exact reasons, that they would ferment more hatred and bloodshed in whatever location they would end up in, or a lot of them would. So there I see a big source of the reluctance for anybody to take them in.
Yeah, and so just to comment a bit more on the this Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. So I believe they are still based in Ramallah, but they get their funding from the EU and the Ford Foundation, which is a private fund set up by the Ford family, by, I mean, the original, what's his first name? Harold Ford?
Henry Ford.
Henry Ford, that's the one. I knew it's H.
And the Ford Foundation does not have a great track record of supporting causes.
But sort of just to mention it, so when it comes to sort of like trusting the numbers, they've been known to basically, there were a few riots of their offices because they published some of the not very nice looking numbers when it comes to Palestinian side. I think when they published that only 10% support, only 10% of Palestinians sort of I think like support the right of return, basically the idea that all Palestinian refugees that ever lived can return back to Israel. They didn't like those numbers. But yeah, as Richard mentioned, the numbers have barely changed, which was really disappointing to see since the last one, which was, as I've said, in September 2024. when it comes to the question, do you think October 7th was the right thing to do? Still, 50% of Palestinians believe that it was the right thing to do. Now, when you go to Gaza, it drops, but it doesn't drop that much. It drops to 37%. So just imagine, like, when I was in the southern Israel, I was able to, we had like a telescope and you could like look into Gaza. That shit is destroyed. Like a lot of the that not much was standing in the north of Gaza. And the fact that 1/3 of the people there would look around themselves and be like, you know what? Yeah, this was worth it. And you really have to be rationalist to still believe that, right? Like there is no way inductively you look around yourself and you think, yes, October 7th was a great idea. You really have to go outside. You really have to think, yes, but we did kidnap people. We did hurt Israel. We did get a lot of recognitions from the international community about our violence against the Jews. We we have sort of the world behind. Israel is sort of like more isolated than it's ever been, besides sort of like America and maybe a few more nations. Really, if you are complete rationalist, then you're like, yeah, this is like great stuff. We are still doing great, all things considered. And it really shows the different kind of world Palestinians are living in. The fact that they still, or that some, or that, well, many still believe that that was a sort of a great thing to do. Yeah, I mean, to go to you, Marco, any more comments on any other numbers or?
Yeah. Well, as Adam also pointed out earlier on the TDO, in order for a dictatorship to exist, you must have the implicit and tacit and sanction of the population, and that's exactly what the survey shows. The Hamas is still supported by the Gazans because that's the kind of stuff that they want. They are, again, they've been very explicit in telling us what they want, and they want the destruction of Israel. They will not stop until every single Jew is vanquished and certain there isn't a state of Israel. So, but I mean, unlike the West, they're not pragmatists. They just do what they say they want to do: destroy the Jews, destroy civilization, and eventually they will turn to the rest of the West. They don't like civilization. They implemented things that some hallucination told them over 1,000 years ago. I mean, how is it possible that somebody who chooses to follow a religion then implements it in a way that doesn't respect the human values that we have implemented in our society? How is it possible that, yes, we are all in favor of people moving across borders, but protecting individual rights, that's the job of the state, doesn't mean allowing somebody who claims the hallucination tell them to treat women like second-class citizens and allows them to do it. So, you know, there's some give and take. You either believe in a God and you behave in a total savage way, or you move somewhere else and recognize that you cannot break somebody else's rights because of an irrational belief. So it's...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things the survey brings out is the distinction between the fact that these people polled think that Hamas is losing the war, but they're winning the propaganda war. So there's some recognition that the place is a pile of rubble to some extent, and it's the fact that they also think that it was worth it because it's put their issue on the map, which is not recognizing a defeat, and it's not recognizing that you have lost in any way. And some of that also relates to the protests, so that which you covered on shows in this on this channel about protests within Gaza against Hamas. And again, they were polled about this, and that there was a high percentage of people who thought that it was outside agitators, aka the Jews, who were behind, promoting these protests, really, rather than their own population being on the turn against Hamas, and this being an example of it. and of course that fits with the rest of the survey, and it fits with the mentality that the Jews are evil and behind everything, which is what motivates everything that's led to the rubble in the first place.
Anders?
Yeah, it's just really tragic that a people can be so self-destructive, both mentally and physically, and hopefully at some point it will be a lesson for the world, and hopefully Israel will stand firm and continue to do what it needs to do, even be more firm, so that we can bring this conflict to an end and achieve peace in the region.
Somebody says it's Gen Z that are a real problem. Gen Z is kicking ass as one of the greatest generation that's ever been, and that is an objective opinion. I mean, not an opinion, that's an objective fact. With that, Marco, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
No, I refuse. After what you said, I refuse to speak.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish with I disagree.
Well, if people want to see what Marco and Richard are up to, you can check out our other sister channel, The Briefly Objective. It's a much shorter content, and it's produced by Marco and Richard. Anders, any last thoughts on where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I'm a late baby boomer, so I'm above all of this generational stuff, You'll find me on Substack, andersingemarson.substack.com. My book, Think Right or Wrong, Not Left or Right, is available on Amazon as ebook, paperback, or audio.
And with that, thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective, as well as the reality show. Thank you guys for joining me, and bye-bye.